With over 270 lakes, Chrissy is aptly branded as the Lake District of South Africa. The area was first inhabited by the San people, but during the gold rush, it became a stopover town on the way to Barberton. Interestingly, the town and its name have Scottish links.
Mukokingdale came to South Africa round and about 1856, and this place reminds him of Scotland. Then they called it Little Scotland, and he decided to ask Paul Creer, the president of the old ZAR, Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, if he cannot buy farms in this place. So Paul Creer says, all right. And it was approximately 200 farms he sold to Mukokingdale. And then the Scottish people, they immigrated to Chrissy. That is why you will see there's a lot of names in this place, like Lake Banniger, Knockdhu, Hamilton. It is all Scottish names.
When Mukokingdale got the land, there were no buildings or accommodation. Legend has it that he lived in this cave while his home was being built. Today, the house has been turned into accommodation for people passing through. A more curious place to stay in town is the Jailbird Cottage. Not many would be willing to spend a night in a jail, but it does make for a travel tale. This old jail has been converted into self-catering cottages, and for an authentic feel, it comes complete with bunk beds and enamel utensils. For more conventional country accommodation, there is Florence Guest Farm. With its earthy sandstone design, it doubles as a luxury wedding venue. Another interesting spot is Miss Chrissy's country house. Guests not only get beautiful accommodation, but also the opportunity to learn how to make cheese from scratch. A trip to the local graveyard is not exactly the typical school excursion, but it's exactly what these kids do.
The children gather with their teacher each year at this gravesite to commemorate the passing away of Lieutenant Swanson, who was killed in battle trying to save a private Cornick's life. He was engaged to be married to a lady who unfortunately had to leave behind in England, and each year on his death a parcel arrived at the post office, and every year after that a box arrived, and the flowers have been placed ever since. The children at the school now proceed to do this each year in October.
Chrissy has historical and physical charm, but it's the lakes that make this an attractive place for visitors from as far as Japan.
And my friend, former university professor, he took me here, Christmere. That then I was surprised because rich nature and all people are very friendly, gently. So I wanted to stay here, but that then I must work at Japan. So try to come to Christmere almost every year.
Chrissy is a very, very special place. Anyone that comes here will tell you that it's a combination of things. It's the environment, it's the people. We have some very special things in Chrissy. What probably makes it, well, 5 things that kind of stand out for me is the fact that our lake is Lake Chrissy, is the largest freshwater lake in Southern Africa when it's full. Chrissy also falls in the heartland of what you call the Panveld, which is a very unique ecosystem. We have 270 lakes and pans that are seasonal within a 15-kilometer radius of the town. We've also got 7 of South Africa's rivers that start here, and we're the head catchment area for most of South Africa's water. From an eco side, we have some amazing things. We've got over 200 species of bird that are found here, a lot of them endemic, and many people come from all over the world just to see 2 or 3 of the species that are here. We also have a festival here for the cranes. This is one of the main breeding areas for the crowned crane, or mahem, which makes it very, very unique.
As a threatened species, the crane is protected by the Endangered Wildlife Trust.
It's the African Crane Conservation Program, and we work in partnership with the International Crane Foundation. And in South Africa we have a couple of projects across the grasslands. So I'm the field officer for the Highveld project, so looking at specifically at crane, wetland, freshwater conservation in the Highveld region of South Africa.
The entire wetland and ecotourism prospects are under threat from the mining industry.
But unfortunately on the Highveld and in the Chrissysmere area we now have the threat of mining. We're talking about open cast coal mining, so the impact is very big in terms of visual impact, noise, dust pollution, habitat loss to the species. So mining will really have a very big impact on what we're trying to create and conserve in the area. And that's why we are very concerned about the current mining applications in the Chrissysmere area.
Joining me now in our Cape Town studio to talk more about the mining threat in Chrissysmere is environmental lawyer Melissa Fourie from the Centre for Environmental Rights. Melissa, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Of course, we've just seen an insert about the impact of mining companies and the threat that mining has in this area of Chrissysmere. Talk to me a little bit about what your organization's involvement is.
We are very concerned about Chrissysmere as a symbol, really, of what's going on in Mpumalanga, but in mining in general in South Africa, and coal mining in particular. Chrissysmere is one of those really special area. It's been recognized repeatedly by different institutions and in different spheres as an area of critical biodiversity importance and of important aquatic ecosystems. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, the Minister of Mineral Resources, Susan Shabangu, in fact said that it was so important that she was intending to declare it as an area off limits for mining for a 3-year period. Unfortunately, she's never really taken that any further. And in the meantime, her department has accepted an application for a large open cast coal mine in that very critical biodiversity area. So it's, we have to start asking questions about what the Department of Mineral Resources really wants to achieve with all of this, starting to impact on our really important areas that provide important ecosystems to our country. It really speaks to kind of decisions for us as a nation as to what we want to achieve with these special areas and with coal mining in particular.
Of course, Melissa, what you highlight seems to be a very big gap in terms of legislation, especially on the part of government institutions that have the mandate to carry out that legislation. Why do you think there's such a soft-handed approach to enforcing legislation around this issue?
I mean, it's a complex issue. Primarily, we suffer from a lack of political will as a country. I think there is business interest that's speaking loudly than any other concern in this country. And it's important to understand also that this is not about job creation. When you look at some of the more controversial mines that we've seen, like the Vele Colliery in Mapungubwe, we see big promises being made by mining companies and really not delivering on those promises. So you have to then, look behind that and understand that this really is about business interests, invested business interests, not about uplifting poor people or anything like that. As for compliance and enforcement, of course, we'd like to see far more stringent conduct by the authorities, all the departments involved. But the Department of Mineral Resources really has they've always claimed this function of regulating the environmental impact of mining for themselves, and they're still holding on to it in the current law reform process. And yet they've never, ever shown any commitment to enforcing that legislation. For them, there's an inherent conflict. They're meant to promote mining, and that is the reason why we as civil society organizations argue that they really shouldn't be in charge of this at all.
Of course, Melissa, you touched on a very topical issue and a hotly debated one at that, and that's of job creation, which is the main argument that these mining houses tend to lean on. Is there a response from an environmental point of view or an alternative to say that if not job creation through the mining houses, how else do the communities in those particular areas get sustainable livelihoods?
Yes, of course. I mean, and as environmentalists, and I really think I can speak for all of us, we are so committed to job creation. We believe that this is important in the bigger scheme of things, that people are employed. However, we have to ask questions, first of all, about broken promises, where we are allowing and compromising our natural heritage in the interest of promises of jobs that they never materialize. And you must remember that there's no follow-up on these things because there's no compliance and enforcement by the Department of Mineral Resources. Mining companies really can promise anything, and there's no consequence for them if they suddenly employ only a third of the number of employees that they said they would, and on the basis of which they got granted approval. So, you know, then of course there's the whole issue of ecotourism and other types of employment for people, agriculture. You know, this is the other big consideration that we discuss in our sector a lot, is the impact of mining on agriculture and food security. You know, of course, agriculture also employs a lot of people in South Africa. So you know, that's the other thing that we really need to give consideration to. What is it that we want for our people in this country? You know, do we want to allow big companies to come in, take what they can get, and repatriate all of those dividends offshore, which is what we're seeing is happening at the expense of our environment, our natural heritage, and you know, quite frankly, a lot of this is life and death issues. I mean, you cannot eat coal and you cannot eat money. You have to drink water and you have to eat food. So these are really important principal decisions for us to consider and to take as a country.
Of course, Melissa, I think you raised very relevant points, and I want to come back to one that you touched on briefly, and this is the concept of ecotourism. What would it take to leverage more jobs from ecotourism?
I mean, that's quite of course, a complex question. I mean, in the first instance, of course, what we have to do is protect the asset around which we build ecotourism. You know, you cannot have a, you know, Yosemite National Park like you have in the United States, or a Kruger National Park here in our own backyard, if you don't protect that asset. So what do we see now? We see the Barberton Nature Reserve in Mpumalanga. There we see now the Department of Mineral Resources has granted prospecting rights in a nature reserve. This is a nature reserve that of course generates some ecotourism in itself. There's accommodation around there are tours around there that employs people, and yet now we see the department not only just granting rights, but actually resisting opposition from the conservation agency that is protecting, and have spent millions of rands over the years protecting that area as a nature reserve.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on Latitude.